If some of those wonderful people had guns strapped right here, right to their waist or right to their ankle, and one of the people in that room happened to have it and goes boom, boom, you know what? That would have been a beautiful, beautiful sight. Believe me, you put me in there, we're going to save that Second Amendment.
A ban on Muslims would not have stopped this attack. Neither would a wall. I don't know how one builds a wall to keep the internet out. Not one of Donald Trump's reckless ideas would have saved a single life in Orlando.
Well, the tragedy in Orlando has polarized the debate over gun control and terrorism. It's fueling heated rhetoric on the presidential campaign trail between Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton, as you can see. And joining us now with more reaction, Mike Huckabee, the former Republican governor of Arkansas and a 2016 presidential contender. Welcome, Governor. Great to have you on board today.
Thank you, Uma. Great to be with you.
You know, the Orlando massacre illustrates the scope and complexity of ISIS and its threat, and whether Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump have a plan to counter this terrorist group. All of this against a backdrop of the blame game on whether groups like the NRA and others are further politicizing and exploiting terror fears. What's the fallout right now from your perspective on this presidential race?
Well, I think it helps to point out that the clear choice in this election is whether you believe that terrorism is the result of the weaponry or the result of the ideology. If you think it's the result of the specific weaponry, then you want to vote for Hillary Clinton because she thinks if we get rid of guns in the hands of law-abiding citizens, somehow magically terrorism will stop. If you think that it's the ideology, then you better vote for Donald Trump because he understands that the common denominator in terrorism is not the choice of weapon. It might be a pressure cooker in Boston. It might be a bomb or a knife in Tel Aviv. It might be a gun in Orlando. But the common denominator is a radical jihadist with an intent to, in cold blood, murder as many people as possible.
How concerned are you right now that political correctness remains front and center ahead of national security, and that this debate over using terms like radical Islam will continue to polarize this political campaign?
It's already polarized, and so I don't think it's going to make it any worse. But, you know, you can't defeat an enemy if you don't even acknowledge the enemy that you have. Uma, I just got back from Israel on Thursday, and one of the things in my many, many trips there over the past 43 years is that, you know, they don't play the political correct game. They go after the people who are trying to kill them. I've flown in the helicopter the entire distance of the security fence that Israel put up, much to the scorn of the world. They were hated for it. But suicide bombings in Israel went from 1,000 a year to 0 a year once they put that fence up. So when people say, we don't believe in walls, I heard Hillary say that, then why did the White House 2 days ago get a wall approved that will take the White House fence from 7 feet to 11 feet 7 inches? If walls don't work, why are they putting a bigger one up? This is the irony of, to me it just shows that the left is intellectually bankrupt when it comes to trying to defend their own arguments.
It's been a bit of a tough couple of weeks for Mr. Trump, and there are those who have been quite critical of some of the remarks he made following Orlando. What do you make of his comments that when he accuses President Obama of putting U.S. enemies ahead of Americans and suggesting that the president may actually sympathize with radical elements? Are you concerned, as some Democrats and Republicans have expressed, that those remarks have crossed a line?
Well, I'm more concerned that the president got more angry at Republicans and Donald Trump than he did at the radical jihadist. When he did his press conference and he talked about Donald Trump and he talked about Republicans, the veins were bulging in his neck. He raised his voice. He was incensed. You could see that he viscerally was just noticeably angry. I didn't hear that same tone in terms of how angry he was at the people who perpetuated these horrible acts. And so, no, I don't think that it's hurting Donald Trump. And I think these delegates and the talk of, you know, we're going to go and just change the rules and we're going to not have Donald Trump as the nominee, these people are delusional. They absolutely are delusional if they think that the Republican Party has any future if it waits until after over 14 million people have voted, more than any have ever voted for a candidate, voting for Donald Trump, try to steal the nomination from him. And Paul Ryan, instead of saying to Congress, members need to just kind of be wussy and go the way of whatever they think, what he needs to do is stand up, be a leader, and say, guys, we had an election. Donald Trump won. We're Republicans. We're going to support him. And get behind him and stop this nonsense.
Well, do you expect that to change? Do you think folks are behind the scenes talking to the Speaker and saying, you know, get on board, you're hurting the party?
I think that the number of people who realistically think that they can stop Donald Trump from being the nominee could fit into a single booth at Waffle House. So, no, I don't think that this is some big movement. I think that there are people who think it's a movement, but there's an old saying from one of my favorite preachers. He used to make this statement. He said, a lot of people think they're leaders, but when they look around, nobody's following them. And if you're thinking you're leading and nobody's walking with you, you're just out taking a walk. You're not a leader. And I think a lot of these folks are just out for a walk because nobody's following.
Let me ask you about concerns that in light of Orlando, Donald Trump is moving to the left on gun control. If he does, what impact would this have on the base of the party?
Well, even in the clip that you played a moment ago, I didn't hear anything that sounded like left-wing talk. I don't think Donald Trump is moving to the left. I think he has full respect for the Second Amendment and for the fact that people have a right to defend themselves, their families, their properties. Everybody grieves when someone is killed, whether they're killed by a gun or killed by a knife or a bomb, or for that matter by a car or an alligator. It's a horrible thing, and we lament that.
Well, do you think
again,
exploitation is happening right now? Do you think exploitation is happening right now in terms of the reality and the facts? I mean, is there really any legislation that would have stopped the Orlando massacre? I mean, I guess, is the rhetoric so heated right now that it's exploiting people's fears?
Well, I think you just pointed out the most obvious question. Tell me the specifics of the legislation that would have prevented it. Because this is the same thing we hear, whether it's Sandy Hook or any type of moment where we have a gun crime. We've got to have common sense legislation. But everything that's proposed, even the experts agree, it would not have prevented that specific crime. So when I'm confronted with this question about, you know, well, don't you support some legislation, I say, name me the specific piece of legislation. Tell me how it would have prevented this. This is a guy that went to a gun store. One gun store told him no. He was on the FBI's watch list. They took him off. Uma, I've said this guy was raising more red flags than you'll see at a Chinese military parade. And I just don't know what piece of legislation would have somehow made this different. What makes it different is that we identify people who are radicalized, and we don't let them into places where they can purchase guns. And it's not about keeping people like you or me from protecting ourselves. It's keeping a guy like that from getting off the watch list.
Yeah, it's very complicated. Obviously, something we're going to be watching very closely. And unfortunately, the polarization, as you point out, is rampant on this issue completely.
Yes.
Governor, great to see you. Thank you so much, and happy Father's Day to you.
Thank you very much, Uma. Appreciate it.